What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Confused Creative Podcast, where we talk all things culture, consciousness, and creativity. I am your host, Tiny, and I just want to say happy 313 day. You see the shirt, you see it. Happy 313 day to all of my Detroiters. If you live in Detroit, if you're from Detroit, if your parents from Detroit, happy 313 day to who celebrates it. I am from Detroit, Michigan, so I would be remiss to not dedicate a podcast episode to Detroit, Michigan, on 313 day. So by the time you see this, it will be 313 day. Shout out to Detroit. Shout out to us, shout out to us, shout out to us. Now, since it is 313 day, okay, I want to talk about the phrase Detroit versus everybody. Detroit versus everybody is a very well-known phrase and movement, I guess, if you will, in Detroit. So this phrase was coined by Tommy Walker. He is the founder of the clothing brand Detroit versus everybody. Now, Tommy created this brand to express feelings that many Detroiters feel. Constantly criticized, written off, underestimated, and just overall the underdog. Being from Detroit or Detroiters, we are known for our resilience. We're known to persevere. We're known to get it out the mud. We're known for the grind, for the hustle, all of the things, right? So Detroit versus everybody kind of sums that up. It's more than just a clothing brand. It is, like I said, it is a movement. I remember when the brand first dropped, everybody had their Detroit versus everybody gear on. And I love to see it. It was really like a sense of pride. It was a time of like pride for Detroit people because as a city, Detroit has been through a lot. So like again, Tommy Walker created this clothing brand Detroit versus everybody, but I think the phrase goes so much deeper than a clothing brand or than what we realize. So I kind of want to talk about that today. I want to get into that. I feel like Detroit has influenced the culture in ways that people don't understand. From the music, the fashion, the beauty, the auto industry. Like you can look up across pop culture and see a footprint of Detroit anywhere. Like Detroit has influence in pop culture and in culture, period. But somehow, some way, we are still the underdog when it comes to cities that are on the map, cities that are known for the creativity, cities that are thriving in the creative businesses, cities that are thriving economically in creative industries. Detroit remains the underdog. No matter how much we have contributed to culture over the years, the main powerhouses continue to be Atlanta, Los Angeles, New York, hell, even Chicago, I feel like, is really on the map in the creative scene. And I feel like people respect Detroit. Don't get me wrong. Anywhere that I go and I tell people that I'm from Detroit, I feel like there is a level of respect there. But we still slept on. And I know it. There's something different about us. There's something that separates us and that puts us apart from all of these other powerhouse cities. And to be honest with you, a lot of creatives from Detroit leave. I am one of them. I was born in Detroit, born and raised. So I was in Detroit from birth to 17 years old. And 17 years old is when I went to college. I went to Eastern Michigan University, which is a town about maybe 45 minutes away from Detroit. So even though I left my hometown when I was 17, I was still about 45 minutes away. So used to go back and forth all the time. But I definitely felt like there was a point in my career where I needed to move out of Michigan. I needed to get out of Detroit. I felt like I reached a cap in Detroit. No matter how creative the scene of Detroit is, I did feel like I reached a cap. Me personally, though. Not that Detroit doesn't have creative opportunities, but I wasn't getting them. It was hard for me to, continue to find my place there. So I did move. I moved to Los Angeles. And I know that is the story for a lot of creatives. Like, we love our city, we respect our city, but it just wasn't the place for us creatively. But I think there's a reason for that. Even though there's so much magic back at home, even though all of the creativity, the authenticity is in Detroit, there is a reason why young Black professionals get the fuck from our hometown. And this can apply to anywhere. So this is not exclusive to Detroit, but we talk about Detroit today because it's 313 Day. Okay? So yeah. All in all, let's get into it. Let's get into why Detroit is respected but not recognized at the same time. Why does a city that drives so much culture still feel like the underdog? Now listen, I am not a licensed, or I don't have a degree in sociology, but I pay attention to culture, I pay attention to big events that have happened. And there are a few reasons as to why I think people move away from Detroit, they build somewhere else, and why the creative scene is very tight-knit. I have a few observations and I want to share them with y'all, and I want to know what y'all think. Okay, so first, in order for me to talk about Detroit, I need to talk about Atlanta, Georgia really quick. So my mom's side of the family is from Georgia. My grandmother is from Georgia, born and raised, all of her siblings, her parents. I have heavy roots in Georgia. So during the summers when I was a kid, we used to always take trips down south. And they were the best trips ever. Like, when I tell you, back then as a kid, I used to really put not just Atlanta, but Georgia on a pedestal. Everything about Georgia was better than Michigan to me. The weather, the people were nicer. It was a better economy. Shit was actually cost efficient. Everything was cheap. Everything was cheaper there. Like, my cousins would be living in this big ass house. I'm talking 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, upstairs, downstairs, big ass backyard. And my family in Detroit, Michigan lived in like a cute, cozy little 3-bedroom house, shared a room with my sister, and the houses were around the same price. And it's just like, wow, like, it's much better here. Like, you get more bang for your buck. The weather is freaking nicer. The people are nicer. The Southern charm. And you know what? I just love a Black Southern person. Like I said, my grandma is from the South. So a lot of, principles that she grew up on, I grew up on as well, because she had a hand in raising me. A lot of the way that I am, I do feel like comes from the South, simply because my grandmother has roots in the South. But the one thing that I always used to be jealous of about Georgia and the South in general, and Atlanta, they got all of the music first. Like, every time a new song was released, Atlanta had it first. Every new song hit Atlanta first, and then we heard it like a couple of months later or a month later. It just seemed like Michigan, Detroit, we were late. We were late to the music and to the industry. And that was so interesting to me, because I'm just like, why is that? And back then, when I used to visit Georgia, oh gosh, Atlanta ran the music industry, especially hip hop. Atlanta had a crazy run when I was a kid. And that made me want to live in Georgia even more, because I'm like, it's lit over here. Okay, it's lit. I feel like there was a certain time where New York ran this shit. I mean, New York kind of always has a hand in the music industry. So New York has had its time. I feel like LA has maybe had it. Well, I think LA is really getting its run now, but we'll talk about that. But New York had its time, but then Atlanta had its time. Like, Atlanta specifically. Like, if you are into music, if you're into hip hop, Black culture, Atlanta was just the place to be. Like, and I used to want to move to Atlanta when I was a kid. I didn't want to be in Detroit. I'm like, take me to Atlanta, okay? But with all of that being said, and even though I'm from Detroit, I failed to realize how much black history in music my own city had. Detroit is home of Motown Records. Now, just a little quick backstory of Motown Records. So Motown Records is a huge part of not just musical history, but of black history. Motown Records was founded by Berry Gordy in about 1959, so the early 1960s. So Motown Records was a black-owned, independent record company. So Motown was designed to appeal to black and white spaces and crowds. The goal was to showcase black talent and to show that we are talented and we can fit into this space just like white people. So this is, heavy around the time where the civil rights movement was going on. Martin Luther King was big. This is around the time where integration was really taking place, and Motown Records had a huge influence on that. This Motown is what made black artists mainstream. So by black artists becoming mainstream, it helped reshape the public perception of black artists. So many of legends have came out of Motown Records. Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, the Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, the list goes on and on and on, but that's just to name a few. So many artists came out of Motown Records, and this all started in Detroit, Michigan. And what's interesting about Motown Records? Detroit is known for the auto industry, Ford, GM. Detroit is a blue collar city, so a lot of our, my dad, works at Ford still. So Detroit is known, for the auto industry, and Berry Gordy actually worked in the auto industry, and he applied the same well-oiled machine to the Motown record company. So this man who worked at the plant, he invested in a black-owned independent record company. And like I said, produced so many legends. I'm really interested in this story too. I might create something later on down the line, like diving deeper into all of this, because this story is crazy. Now, so back to my story, right? So like, I'm in Atlanta, I'm seeing how lit it is, I'm seeing all the black culture, but then it hit me, it's just like, damn though, like, but Detroit is literally the home of Motown. So why is it that Detroit has not had the crazy musical run like Atlanta? Why? When is it our turn? Now, I did want to mention as well, Motown did move from Detroit to Los Angeles because of the uprising of 1967. The uprising of 1967 literally changed Detroit forever. It changed Detroit forever. So Motown ended up moving again from Detroit to Los Angeles because of the Detroit riots. And again, that's a whole nother episode, learning about the Detroit riots. But like, the Detroit riots changed Detroit forever. There was so much economic loss during that time, and the city went through a lot. Just in those 5 days, or however many days, I think it was 5, but just in those 5 days, Detroit changed drastically. And, it was never the same from then. But I do think that is interesting that Motown moved from Detroit to LA, and there is so many parallels in the music and in the swag. Hey, I'm not saying what y'all think I'm saying, but if you think I'm saying it, then I'm saying it. Again, Detroit, we have a footprint everywhere, but I digress. That's a whole nother conversation. There was just no infrastructure in Detroit to sustain Motown Records, and I think that rings true for a lot of things, and I think that Atlanta, what made Atlanta different from Detroit is that Atlanta really had an ecosystem. Like, niggas come to Atlanta to work, to collaborate. It even reminds me when Kendrick says in his song, when he to his diss to Drake, you run to Atlanta when you need a check balance. Like, Niggas run to Atlanta when they need that check. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Atlanta, dare I say, maybe it's a more collaborative place. Maybe it's not as gatekept as Detroit. We have artists from Atlanta that are talented. We have artists from Detroit that are talented. But what's the difference? Atlanta has that ecosystem. There were Atlanta artists with their own labels. There are, Atlanta artists like putting each other on. We got T.I., we got Gucci Mane, and talking more recent times, we got Lil Baby, we got Migos, we got Quality Control. Like, there is a certain thing, there's a certain energy that happened in Atlanta, and even taking it all the way back when I was a kid. You got Jermaine Dupri, you got Little John and the East Side Boys, you got them franchise boys. Like, I'm not saying that Detroit, maybe I am saying it. Okay, how about this? I'm not saying that I'm 100% correct, but we starting conversations, right? This is Confused Creative, and we're talking about shit that, like, we starting conversations here. We're just starting conversations, and my theory is telling me that Detroit, again, could not sustain an economic structure for artists to thrive. Again, in Atlanta, there are artist-ran labels. Like I said, Gucci had his own label. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, it's not that Atlanta is more talented than Detroit, but the ecosystem is just better. And I do think that the riots that hit Detroit has had a lot to do with it. A lot of people moved away. So when people move away, that money moves away as well. A lot of poverty, a lot of abandonment, just a lot. That riot was a lot, and it took a lot out of us. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that if that didn't happen, maybe we would be the Mecca for music. But, unfortunately, shit goes down in that way. When we talk about these places, we really got to look at the history of it, because it's not that the talent isn't there. It's just that we need the infrastructure. So, I don't know, maybe in the future that looks like something else. Maybe there's a record label, maybe somebody's building a record label now, and maybe one day people will move to Detroit to pursue their music. But I don't know. What y'all think about that? And dare I say, what if Atlanta is more collaborative than Detroit? Detroit is gatekept. And I've seen and heard a lot of people talk about this. Personally, I've experienced that Detroit can be cliquish. But I don't know if that's a bad thing. But I do feel like because the clique is so tight, maybe we are stunting our own growth from having more global influence. But sometimes I do feel like gatekeeping is necessary, because a lot of niggas, they feel like they can come to your city, steal your shit, get in your inner circles, and, start moving the way that they want. And Detroit is not fucking with that. And I respect that. I respect that about the Detroit circles. Let me tell you something. Detroit is so damn serious about who is from there and who's not. I'd be having to prove myself, okay? Until I lay out that zip code. 48223. That's my zip code. That was my zip code. I ain't gonna tell you the street, but west side of Detroit, 48223. Even I feel like I'm on the outskirts of Detroit. Again, that's why I left, because, if you're not necessarily in the ends, and, like, for example, I look at Cash Doll and her friends, like, they're Detroit elites. Like, they're the end. They have an end, and not all of us have that. So Detroit definitely can be a little cliquish, but again, I don't know if that's a bad thing, because then you got motherfuckers coming from whichever way, stealing your culture, moving somewhere else and claiming it's theirs. So I'm gonna leave that one up to interpretation. Tell me what y'all think. Do y'all think it's a good thing that Detroit gatekeeps? Because at the end of the day, we are protecting our inner circles and our culture, and we not gonna have nobody take advantage of us. Or do you think that we are stunting our own growth and hindering more influence, more global influence? Are we stopping ourselves from being on the map? Like, what do y'all think? Okay, another reason why I feel like Detroit is an underdog city. Y'all about to don't hate me. I'm just going out on a limb here. I'm gonna just say it. It's the sports teams. I feel like Detroit is an underdog city because of the sports teams. Now, obviously, there were times in history that Detroit was on the map when it came to the sports teams. I know the Red Wings, the Detroit Tigers had a time, and the Detroit Pistons definitely have had two big times in history where we was on the map. But speaking of the Pistons, I want to use the Pistons as an example. I watched a couple of documentaries about the bad boys era of the Pistons, and I even remember, in 2003, 2004, when the Pistons won against the Lakers. I don't think that was the bad boys era, but again, I've been there. I've seen a few things. I'm not a sports person, but I am an observer of culture. It seems like the Pistons, the nickname Bad Boys, again, came from resilience. It came from their tough gameplay, not necessarily because they was really whooping shit, but because they was literally whooping shit. Like, they were known for their aggressive gameplay, for their defense. I think that's what they call it, for their defense. They beat MJ and them. My niggas was so rowdy. Yeah, like that, really like that. But no, that was an era. And then we had the era, that was the era in the 90s, Bad Boys, Detroit Pistons. They were known for really whooping shit, being those underdogs and then rising to the top. Again, that underdog story. Fast forward to 2003, I remember I was in 3rd grade. Bitch, you couldn't tell Detroit shit about shit when we won against the Lakers. That was such a huge moment for us. But since then, shit's been quiet. Now, I know, things have gotten better. Like I said, I don't follow sports religiously, so I can't tell you everything, but I do know that, we haven't had a run like that since 2003, 2004. Also, we gotta talk about the Detroit Lions. You know what? Y'all ain't never met a diehard football fan until you have met a Detroit Lions fan. You gotta be a special type of fan to go hard for a fucking team that loses so much. And I'm not even talking about now. I know the Lions have gotten much better, so it's no shade towards the current Lions. But back then, when I was a kid, I remember my grandma and granddad, they literally used to dog the Lions so bad. Lions lost again. That was always the conversation in my grandparents' household, how trash the Lions were. But they wore that shit with pride. They still tuned in to watch the Lions lose. I've never seen a football fandom like the Lions. And it's just so crazy because I think we all bond over how much resilience this team has had to have and how much they lose. And it's kind of weird. It really creates a community when your sports team just sucks so bad. So I kind of feel like Detroit is an underdog too because of the losing streaks our sports teams have had. Like I said, I'm not a sports fan, but again, I feel like the Detroit Lions, they represent Detroit perfectly. Not saying that we're losers, but just that underdog, that resilience. If the Lions would have made it to the Super Bowl that one year that they were close, that would have been crazy. That would have been history. It's still going to happen one day. I don't know when, but it's still going to happen. But yes, the sports teams are just another representation of what we go through as a city, and I do believe that sports teams and winning creates a certain type of pride in the city. And also, winning sports teams bring a lot of economic gain for a city. I live in LA, and I think was that last year the Dodgers won the World Series. But let me tell y'all something. If I was an LA native, being here just was so lit because not only was Kendrick on a run, but the Dodgers were going crazy. So to just witness another state or another city have so much pride in their music artists and in their sports team, that's the type of energy and rejuvenation I feel like Detroit needs. And we gonna get it. But yeah, like I said, I do think that Sports teams, like, that has an effect. That has an effect on city pride and just the spirit of the city. So that's another reason why I feel like Detroit is an underdog. Okay, and then kind of like my last thing that I want to say, I feel like the way that the media shows Detroit, the way that the media portrays Detroit, is unfair. Of course, when you think of Detroit, you think of urban, you think of poverty, you think of crime. Crime in the D. Damn Instagram page. Like, we are not shown, the world does not see us in the light that we actually are, but it's reflected in the people that get out and move away. When you meet somebody from Detroit, that spirit is different, So, like, we know the beauty in our city, but I just really think the media portrays us in a fucked up light, And also, I want to say, even though this happened a long time ago, Detroit has distrust when it comes to its leadership. And I feel like this happened with the Kwame Kilpatrick scandal. And the Kwame Kilpatrick scandal, listen, if you wasn't around for that, I would look up the Kwame Kilpatrick scandal. I was young. I was like maybe in third grade, but I just remember how much of an impact it had on the city. Again, a lot of distrust in the leadership happened, and I think it embarrassed our city a little bit. Like, it's like, damn, y'all mayor doing this to y'all. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like I said, I was kind of young when all of that happened, but I just feel like, again, the way that we are portrayed in the media is just so different. Like, even when I tell people out here that I'm from Detroit, the response is always so different. Like, again, like, I feel like it's respected, but I don't feel like niggas really know. And I feel like I talk to a lot of creative people out here, and even creative people in the music industry, and they don't even know the impact that Detroit has had on the industry that they're in. And it's not their fault, but like, man, it's crazy to think that how much of an underdogs we are. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I even think that artists from Detroit are underdogs. Like, Detroit obviously has superstars, but in particular, I'll talk about Eminem and I'll talk about Big Sean. Eminem and Big Sean are not Detroit rappers. They're rappers from Detroit. But they're not just rappers, they're superstars. They're global. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but I still feel like they get counted out of the conversation I do know that people mention Eminem, but I still feel like when we talk about the greats, like, we talking about the Tupacs, we talking about the Jay-Z's, we talking about the Wayne. Lil Wayne is my favorite rapper personally. But, Eminem is in some people's top, but I don't hear it enough. And then I gotta talk about one of my favorite artists, Big Sean. I feel like Big Sean is so underrated, and I can't help but feel like it's because he's from Detroit. I can't help but to feel like that. And he might not feel like that. He might feel like he gets a lot of love, but it can be more. It can be more. I don't know. For some reason, I feel like y'all niggas be sleep on Detroit artists, okay? And you know what's crazy? And I stand by this. I feel like Big Sean and Nipsey Hussle, the same. I love Nipsey Hussle, okay? Let's be clear, I love Nipsey Hussle. And I feel like Big Sean and Nipsey Hussle both talk about such important shit in their music. And I just don't know why Big Sean gets the reputation that he gets. When I hear men, or when I listen to podcasts with men and they talk about rappers and like who's doing great, and it's always the Kendricks and the Coles, and Big Sean just has so much influence, and he came out around that same time, and I would never understand why he's counted out of the conversation. And we could talk about that in the comments. But if Big Sean don't have no fans in the room, I'm not in that room. Because Big Sean, you'll always have a fan in me. It's a great artist. He's a great artist. But yeah, okay, I know I've been rambling, but y'all, that is my point of view about why I think Detroit is such an underdog city. I'm going to have to expand on this topic a little more, but in honor of 313 Day, I just kind of wanted to, touch on this topic, and I got to leave with saying, like, I love Detroit. Detroit is so special. Detroit has birthed and cultivated so many moments, so many movements in history. It really truly is a special place. I can't wait to go back and visit my fam. I can't wait to go to Detroit in the summer because there is no summer like a Detroit summer. We get all 4 seasons. Our lingo is the best. Our women is the finest. Like, we really lit. We really like that. And before we go, I want to list off some artists or some people that are from Detroit that you didn't know was from Detroit. Now, this segment of the podcast, this is not for people from Detroit or from Michigan. Like, because when y'all hear this list, y'all gonna be like, duh, they from Detroit, duh, they from Detroit. But I'm telling you, living out here in LA, you will be surprised how many people don't know that certain people are from Detroit. So I really gotta let y'all niggas know. So this is just a little short list of people that you need to know is from Detroit. We got 42 Doug, Aaliyah, the singer, rest in peace, Cash Doll, Peasy, T Grizzly, Cash Kid, Skilla Baby, Stevie Wonder, Babyface Ray. I put Diana Ross. I think she's from Detroit. Rio, Icewear Vezo, Kenya Moore, Lonnie Love, and Carlos King. So these are a mixture of like producers, rappers, artists, reality stars that are from Detroit. Drop down in the comments some more people that y'all don't think is from fucking Detroit. Marvin Gaye. Detroit people, help me out. Let these niggas know. Let these niggas know how we really coming. And just all in all, like, just because I don't live in Detroit anymore, I'm very happy to be from Detroit. And the city that I know today is not the city that I grew up in. The city of Detroit is beautiful. It's on the come up. There are creators thriving and making it each and every day there. So I would say, like, if you're in Detroit and you feel like you want to make it in Detroit, you can do that. Not all of us have done it, but I believe that you can. If you have a pride to stay in Detroit, do that. It is a great place to be. In the Black community, I love the Black community there. Living here in LA has helped me appreciate where I'm from so much more. So yeah, happy 313 day. This has been the Confused Creative Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye.